Good morning. Ooh, a little bit more light. That might be too much. That's not enough. That's too much. Too much. Let the camera take care of it. I apologize for the conditions. They aren't the best. It's kind of the middle of the night. It's a cool night. I was reminded of an old friend. Had a dream about my brother and my sister. And I started thinking about good and evil. And I really haven't prepared or thought about what I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to try to cover some things for you, some of my understanding. The puppy dog wants attention. Such a good girl. Go eat your food. I'm trying to get her to eat the food. I put her on some steroids. Her wound is healing up really nicely. Just can't wait till that hide is totally healed. It's probably got a hole about that big in her knee area now, which is probably less than half the size it started out with over a week ago. So I figured I would use a course of steroids for 10 days, 5 days of whole tablets followed by 5 of half tablets. And I'm still trying to keep her from going out and bolting and doing too much. But he's got so much drive that it's kind of hard to keep her down. Yeah. She's got that, what they call the Malinois chomp. They snap their jaws together, rattle them. It's kind of unnerving in a way. It reminds me of when I was a kid, the cartoons on television used to do the rattle, the chitter chatter on the teeth chattering together, because her teeth do chatter together. Okay, she's happy. She's getting rubbed. Look, there's evil in the world. And the Bible says clearly not to major in evil. And I guess sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Sounds kind of biblical. It's ancient English, Middle English to me, from what I can tell. But first I want to tell you that if you're a man, like I am, we're all subject to bad thoughts. Occasionally we have some thinking that is stinking. Occasionally we have some thinking that just isn't up to par, and we don't know where it comes from or where it goes to. And this stuff used to bother me quite a bit, because it's one of those things upon which we tend to judge ourselves. I mean, my God, what am I thinking this crap for? This is absolutely horrible. I don't want to think this stuff. Well, when I was hanging out with the Sikhs, with the yogis, what Yogi Bhajan Siri Singh Sahib told us was that thought began as a twine thought, and it bubbled up through consciousness, and then something came out, became dominant. So the idea, or the concept, the theory, from his studies of the old literature, was that you had the plus and the minus part of that thought. It began that way, and yet one part of that bubbled up through our consciousness and was expressed or developed. So when you think of that, that means that all men have evil thoughts, or all thoughts begin as a twine thought, a good part and a bad part. I'm not going to take that concept any further, but I want to tell you that I think that is a natural kind of, let me think of the proper word, from acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a clean anxiety. In other words, the anxiety such thinking produces is innocent, if you will. It's clean. It's it's all right to have that kind of anxiety, because we have to choose what we're going to pay attention to, what we're going to act upon. We do have free will. So the concept is that's clean anxiety. It's mild anxiety. It's to be tolerated. And in terms of acceptance and commitment therapy, you have to accept the unwanted thought. You don't fight it. When you fight it, it gets stronger. And it's kind of like trying to hold down a ball in the water. No matter how hard you try to hold it down and how long you fight against it, it's going to go shooting up out of the water. And so that is what we would call dirty anxiety. I would call it kind of a secondary sort of anxiety. In other words, I've got this miserable, lousy thought. There it is again. Damn, I had that thought. I don't want that thought. Well, with acceptance and commitment therapy, you treat unspoken things as well as spoken, because some of these insults, some of the things we walk around with are from the pre-verbal days, the days before we had speech as a tool. So, the most important thing, according to this concept, as simple as it is, clean anxiety, dirty anxiety, is that you are going to have bad thoughts. You're a man. They can be triggered by all kinds of things. You have to accept the bad thought, observe it, gently observe it, and then remind yourself. Just let it go, observe it, remind yourself of your commitment to your higher values. So that's how you deal with that sort of thing. Sure, I had that thought again. I don't want to go there. But don't condemn yourself over it. Just observe it, let it go, and remind yourself of the greater good, the greater value to which you are committed. Those ideals that are so lofty that they seem impossible to achieve can be approached. The only way they can be approached is by accepting yourself as you are, yet committing, reminding yourself of your commitment to your higher ideals, the stronger, the more important thing, what you value. However, there's an evil that walks among us, and it actually hides among a minority group on the planet. And I think the Bible is trying to tell us about this group. It actually is trying to warn us about this group, and it gives us a lot of clues, some very strong cues. Staring at my shoes. I don't know why she can't stop herself sometimes from taking one. Hey, what was that? What was that? Is there a bug down there or something? What are you going after? Hold on. Let me get the shoe out of there. What was that? Go on. Go get the bug if there's a bug. Anyway. Here's the problem. This group is making itself more known, more readily apparent. And the problem is the group among which they hide, the group they use, they deceive them too. And so they're deceiving the whole world. Now, when I read the Bible about the Antichrist, it's written in the present tense. And some of this stuff was written less than 200 years after Yahshua walked on the earth here with us. Wow. And so they were writing about the Antichrist back then. Read the book of Acts. Read the New Testament. You'll see the Antichrist existed back then. So I come up with a concept. And that was that the Antichrist was a corporation a system, if you will. Now, of course, if we read the Bible, it'll talk to us about Babylon. It'll talk to us about Pharaoh. So Babylon the Great and the 4 different ideations back then in pre-Yahshua times, pre-Christ times. It's pretty well written in there. I don't remember the exact order of them, or I'd got to do some more reading and catch up on things. But what I'm getting at is there's an evil that hides among a minority group on the planet. In the minority group, some of them know it and participate with it eagerly. And also, some that aren't in the minority group participate eagerly in that. So we've got the Church of Satan. It's not located that far from where I sit right now, as a matter of fact. That would be in Sedona, Arizona. And we have that's the headquarters of it in the United States, although it appears though it's more active in Hollywood and far more practice there than any place else. But the secondary headquarters, if you will, this is the western headquarters of the Satanic Church. The eastern headquarters was in Newtown, Connecticut. That's my understanding. And that's where the Sandy Hook shooting took place, or occurred, was staged. I don't know how to regard it. I know that there's about $1 billion judgment against Alex Jones that he has to pay, and it's kind of a ridiculous thing. I don't know if the man has $1 billion to begin with. And I guess the government is trying to make a point that you're not allowed to criticize anything. So it's more of an abridgment of our First Amendment free speech rights. What's the importance of the First Amendment free speech rights? Well, it is so we can communicate, but it's also so that we can express ourselves and have a conscience and develop ourselves and be able to grow, be able to talk freely about things. But we can't do that. Everything is controlled today. We're living in hell. It's quite a prison that we've got constructed for us. And we helped build it ourselves. Now, hold on. I'm talking about that in a larger context. I'm not talking about it in terms of you or me, although it's probably quite true in that way, because you know what your foibles are and what your weaknesses are and what your problems are, the things that hound you. So you probably had a little bit to do with that stuff. What I'm talking about is that we as people, as a collective, as a nation, we brought this on ourselves. Please open your eyes. Please understand that you no longer live in a republic, and this is not America. It is America on the map, but the jurisdiction isn't American. We're not ruled by the Constitution. They pulled a series of grand deceptions upon us. Just like at the end, in the Bible it says, the man who deceived the world. It alludes to him being marched out in front of everybody. And everybody's going to marvel and say, this was the man who deceived the world? So Antichrist has got a couple of versions to me. I come up with this corporate version, which I believe is embodied in that Roman Catholic Church and its offshoots. And it did give us Protestantism, so that's part of it. It also gave us the Muslim faith, Islam, that's a part of it as well. And somehow it's intertwined with the Jewish faith, and I don't know which one begat which one. They're both pretty evil in my opinion. So we have a minority that's running the planet today, that owns it and controls it. And by the way, they owned it and controlled it at the time Yahshua walked the face of the earth. I would like to say the first time, but I mean, that's what we have in the Bible. There probably was a time before that, and there probably will be times after that too. Because as I read the Bible, there's not just one return, there's several returns. So, we're dealing with an evil group, and the Bible tries to tell us about them. And it does work on identifying them. And there's two major clues in the New Testament. One is the time in which Yahshua is confronting the evil ones in the temple court. They were in the temple, and he confronted them. And they claimed they had never been slaves. And it was true. They hadn't been slaves. It's like, hold on. They're Jews, and they've never been enslaved? How could that be? Well, and Yahshua went much further. He said, if you were my sheep, you would recognize my voice. But you're not my sheep, so you don't know who I am. You don't, and your father was the father of all lies. So he pointed out there was a group right then and there. And if we look at things in history and the Bible and read it long enough and well enough and understand it, we'll realize he's referring to the Edomites, the seed that came from Esau. It's not so much that Esau was the problem. His choice was the problem. His wives were the problem. And his children are the problem. They're the most dangerous ones on the face of the earth. They're the smartest of all the bad guys. And when we read the Bible, we realize that Herod the Great was an Idumean. Gee, that doesn't sound like an Edomite, does it? No. Idumean is a Greek word for Edomite. So Herod the Great was an Edomite. So there's another clue for you. Another one is out of the mouth of Yahshua himself. And you have John the Apostle on the island of Patmos taking the dictation, writing down the final book of the Bible, the book of Revelations. And in chapter 2:9 and in 3:9, Yahshua says, I know you who say you are Jews and are not. And one of those verses says, but are of the synagogue of Satan. And the other one basically continues on and says, I shall make you the synagogue of Satan. And that I shall make you bothers me. I can't tell if he's just fingering them or if he's going to make them into the evil. I know that's a little too open-minded probably, but that's the way I like to go when I read the Bible, so I can get more understanding. And do I make errors? Do I make mistakes? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. That's why I welcome correction. I'm not getting many comments. I can't wait till this channel blossoms a bit more and I get some honest feedback from people. The only comment I get, well, I got some derogatory ones threatening my life early on. Figured, oh, well, hell, I don't know who these people are. They don't know me. And if things are going to happen, they're going to happen. There's another clue in the Bible. Very important story. It's written in the Gospels. 3 Gospels in the Bible. And in that story, the Messiah, Yahshua, from the description, he takes some ropes and he fashions a whip out of the ropes. And he's in the temple doing this. And he's made himself a whip. And he goes to town. He goes after the money changers in the temple. So we have an occupation that's associated with the evil ones as well. They're money changers. They like to be in the middle of all transactions, making money off it. Come on, don't lick me. Lay down, lay down. Lay down. Be a good girl. Yes, I know. I'm so glad she's healing up. I've been on edge for quite a while because I didn't know if my approach was going to be the right approach or not. And I'd already run the bills up on other things, and they wanted me to take her into the emergency room, and I didn't want to run up $1,000 bill. From my previous experience with dogs, they tend to dig staples out, all that stuff. And I figured, man, this is just going to get to be real. This could get worse because the infection caused by the treatment, resultant of treatment, could actually cause her to lose her leg or her life. So I let nature take its course for the most part, except I've got a doggone prednisone pill and in her dish over there, among the goop that I put on there, that supplement I've been using, hoping she gets hungry enough and she'll go and eat the damn thing and get that pill in there soon, because I want to keep this dosage up for today and 3 more days beyond it. Anyway, the Antichrist is in a corporate body. It's an institution. Plus, it will be embodied in a man at some point. I can't help but wonder, some of the stuff I hear about, well, that pyramid that doesn't have a top on it, I guess that's supposed to be topped off by the evil one someday. Remember some of these stories that I've heard and wonder about the veracity and the truth of those. In the United States of America today, we're controlled by a group of evil ones. And this show that goes on in D.C. is very much a show. And once you start looking at it as an act, that they're putting on an act, and regarding them as actors and actresses, then you start to understand things much better. You realize that we don't have any control over this government, over our governing bodies in this country. We do have the tools to get control back, I believe, and I hope and I pray that those are available to us. However, there are some sayings that bother me. And one of those adages is you can vote your way into communism, but you can't vote your way out of it. And at this point, they have changed our government and our form of self-governance to the point where I don't think we can get it back. And I also think the country is too far gone. So there may be a solution to it. And that solution might be nukes. Why do I bring that up? Well, it's in the Bible. And I believe that what's in the Bible can be avoided. Most people don't believe that. Well, I think it's possible. If we straightened ourselves up, if you all bought my Bible, and if you read it and sharpened your minds and became useful instruments instead of dull instruments, became intellectuals, became educated, become able to discern good from evil, right from wrong, to a finer level of discrimination. See, that was one of the things that I liked hearing from Siri Singh Saab. He told us that he wanted to make finer discriminations of thought. And of course, at that time, we Americans were all brainwashed. Oh, you cannot discriminate. Discrimination is a bad thing. Well, if you really want to separate the wheat from the chaff, you have to discriminate. And you hopefully have proper judgment, and you act in wisdom on this. And that your insights are correct, and your gut feelings that you go by, the Holy Spirit, is correct. Yeah, you work out your salvation, and that Holy Spirit does get stronger. It gets much better. And life as you get older gets much better as well. I can assure you of that. Each decade gives you more successes, greater insights. Now I'm getting to a point in which I'm going into a pretty high decade up here in my life. And when I tell you, it's kind of shocking. I can't believe that I made it this far. But I've left a lot of people on the way, and there are some people that are older than I am, quite a bit older. And those people tell me I'm young and I got a long ways to go. Well, none of us knows the number of breaths we're going to take, the number of days of our life. We just don't know. I want you to buy my Bible and I want you to read the book of Genesis. I want you to read it more than once. You really have to know the book of Genesis inside and out. And when you're done with that, so you can understand the current crisis, there are the prophets to read. And most people think of just the major prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and the weird one, Ezekiel, who wrote about the other prophets. And then you've got the minor prophets, and people think they weren't important. The books are short, tiny. Let me tell you something. Those small, short books have got some really important contributions to make. In the book of Obadiah, I used to say it was the shortest book in the Bible. Well, it's the shortest book in the Old Testament, which we call the Old Testament. I think it's got 22 verses, and it doesn't even have another chapter. That's it. If you read about it, it tells you about the Edomites and about their destruction. If you read about it, it tells you about the good guys, Jacob, the descendants of Jacob who became named Israel. And you see, this is why the Edomites are going after Jacob, going after Israel, going after the Caucasoid peoples of the earth, because they know we're the descendants of Israel. And they know that our fate in the future is to take them out. Yeah, we get to take the garbage out. When I grow up, I want to be a garbage man. I want to take the garbage out. Why not? It's a good job. It's nice and clean. When we're done with it, we can have something to enjoy, something to marvel about. Well, the garbage is alive and walking the face of the earth today. And he doesn't wear no damn red suit. And he's not walking around in some damn costume so you can recognize him. The devil, what did they say, wears Prada or something like that? The devil wears leather shoes, shirts and ties, dresses up wonderfully. And the word is that back when Eve was deceived, the devil sprinkled himself with silver dust so he could pretend that he was Creator God, Yahweh Father, so he could deceive Eve and seduce Eve. Don't have good data on that. Don't make it gospel. Just say, hey, it's a possibility. We don't have good data on why Eve screwed up, how she screwed up. We've got a little bit on how she screwed up, on how he interviewed her, if you will, how he led her down that horrible path that she went down. And we have Eve's accounting of it and her complaint to her father Yahweh. But we don't know if it was an act of rape. We don't know if it was an act of prostitution. We don't know if she started it. We don't know if it was just a grand deception. We don't know if it was forcible rape. We don't know the circumstances. But we do know the union occurred between her and one of the fallen angels, that being Satan. We'll call him Satan, but I'm going to tell you his real name. Yeah, it's in Wikipedia of all the darn places, and I know you're going to get on my case and say, man, that's not the Bible. You can't use that for a reference. Well, there's extra biblical books from which it comes as well. And I got it from a pastor who's long since passed away, Pastor Paul Burnham. Told me the name of the fallen angel was Gadriel. I decided to write about it and blog about it, so I wanted to be able to spell it right. So I used my spell check, Google. Up comes Gadriel in Wikipedia. Gadriel was one of the 5 leaders of the fallen angels. Well, hold on. A third of the heavenly host was kicked out of heaven, fell to the earth, cast to the earth. Okay? So there's a number of them. And here we have in not the Bible, but in Wikipedia, we have there were 5 leaders. We also have other stories. Some of these are in extra biblical books that they pulled out of the Bible because they didn't want it to make it easy for us to figure this out. And apparently what happened is that 200 of these fallen angels gathered on Mount Hermon. And if you read in the New Testament, you will find she got her bone out. She really likes that bone. And I gave her the smallest of the 3, and it's kind of big for her. I don't know when I'm going to give her the others. Had to put them aside. She likes this one enough. She takes it in and out of her kennel. Anyway, 5 fallen angel leaders. Gadriel was one of them. And it specifies the one who had sex with Eve, who seduced Eve. So this act of a apple, that's not right. Yes, in the Bible it says apple, apple of my eye. Okay. But what we need to understand in particular is that as a result of having sex with this member of the satanic class, Eve gave birth to Cain. Cain was the father of all lies. Their father was the father of all lies. Gadriel obviously lied to Eve. The conspiracy on Mount Hermon was the original sin. It wasn't what Eve did. I'm telling this to make some peace between the Adams and the Eves out there. You got to stop blaming each other, and you got to get used to forming a team again, because it's the only way we're going to get through, and some of us are going to survive the end of this Earth age. And that's what we should be focused on this planet, instead of trying to save the planet from global warming, which is a farce. And it is going to get pretty hot on this planet, especially when that asteroid hits. It's in the Bible. Go read it. It's in the Bible. And if you read the Bible well enough, you'll realize you can figure out where it strikes the Earth. Yes, the North Atlantic. When that sucker smacks the Earth, it's going to heat up all the way across the whole planet. And you're going to know when it hits. Because within about 45 minutes, you're going to feel like you're in a giant oven. It's going to be hot everywhere. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit off track here. What I want you to do is I want you to buy the Bible, and I want you to read the stories so we can talk better. I want to be able to get into what Ezekiel wrote about Jeremiah in particular, because I think that's important to the United States of America. I'd like to get into what the Ark of the Covenant may be, what it is, and where it is. It's still around somewhere. I'd really like to get into the fact that there have been many species on this planet of humanoid before, and that this design that we have, this grand design, appears to be a universal design, whereby we have a couple of legs to propel ourselves on, to walk on, and we have a couple of hands to manipulate tools with and to do things with, and we have a head on top. So that's the shape of a star, 5-sided. Yeah, I guess we are star people, huh? And it was said that Abraham's seed would be as numerous as the stars. Star people, as numerous as the grains of sand on the beach, in the lands. Look, folks, there's a lot of wisdom in the Bible. It has so much depth, I can't convey it to you because I don't know it all. I know just a little bit. I got a jump start on you. I was sidelined. I had a couple of strokes. I realized I had read every book in my library, every book on the shelves except for one. And you know what that was. It was the Bible. So I had neglected to educate myself. I was too busy working, too busy with life. I was working 10 hours a day, and I was commuting 2 hours a day. And man, it was all I could do just to keep and maintain myself during those times I was working. And so I didn't have time to sit on my butt and read the Bible until Yahweh took the wind out of my sails, stroked me, not once, but twice. And I was pretty disoriented and out of it for quite a while. I didn't even realize what had happened to me. Didn't feel it. Well, I felt them actually, but I wrote them off. I ignored them. The first time I thought, I'm just thinking things, just imagining things. It's all in my head. Well, it was. I was feeling it on this side of my head. And it actually was over on here, that side. Lost about a third of my cerebellum. Not the cerebrium, the cerebellum is at the base of the cerebrium, at the cortex. I want you folks to read the Bible. I don't consider myself educated until after I'd read the Bible several times. You see, I was really incapacitated. I couldn't remember one digit to the next digit. My short-term working memory got whacked. I mean, it was way the hell out there. I'd walk from one room into the other room wondering, what was I doing? Why did I come in here? What was going on? I was burning pots and pans on the stove. I think I overfilled the bathtub a time or two. I was having a real rough time. I used to do advanced calculus. Calculus and advanced statistics in my head. Didn't need a paper or pencil. Never realized how powerful my mind was when it came to mathematics. And there I sat. And I remember I had a $3.49 a la carte item. And I had paper and pencil in my hand. And I couldn't calculate a simple tip. Then I remember out dancing. Met one of the most beautiful women in the world I'd ever seen in my life. She was from Brazil. Her English was impeccable. She gave me her number. But I couldn't remember it long enough to write it down on a piece of paper. So I had to go get something to write with in a piece of paper. And by the time I got back, her girlfriend told her not to give me her number. Her girlfriend didn't like me very much. She was one of those fine Christian women you meet in church. One of the crazy ones. She's still out there. She's caused a lot of trouble. She actually met a man who loved her and wanted to marry her. But in her instability, she wrecked that marriage. Just to give you an idea, I was there the day that he shows up with his daughter. His daughter was beautiful. I mean, very beautiful. And his daughter was away in college. And he shows up to the church function, which was watching the Super Bowl in a big room at this church. It was the biggest singles Christian group in all of Phoenix area. Probably about 100 of us attended that group every Sunday. And they're in a big room, and he's sitting in there with this beautiful woman. And his girlfriend comes walking in, and she panics. Who is that? He was going to surprise her. He was going to introduce his fiancée to his bride, his fiancée to his daughter. And she left. She panicked and had a fit. She went off and she cut up all of his police uniforms. He was lieutenant in the police. He was an officer, and he was highly regarded, and he didn't have any uniforms to wear. She destroyed them all. He ended up giving up his job. Talk about destroying your life and destroying somebody else with it. Anyway, that's enough. I'm not going to tell you any more about Jennifer. She became my nemesis. But there I was with this beautiful woman from Brazil, and I wasn't going to get her phone number. So I wasn't very functional in some ways. Also, my friends and I were expecting that I was going to move into some West Coast swing dance competitions. I was probably going to be an intermediate dancer in short order. And I was getting ready to compete. And it's just an amateur sort of thing. And I lost the ability to do that geometrical stuff behind my head. I mean, for some reason, all this stuff behind, you know, I lost that, and I had trouble with geometrical moves and stuff. So, yeah, I was pretty profoundly, and well, I was disabled very profoundly. I could no longer work as a psychologist. It took me several months to realize I wasn't safe to practice, and when I realized it, I took myself out of it pretty much permanently. I didn't like giving up to that. I do realize I've recovered now quite a bit, but the bottom line was I could not defend my license anymore. And the board was a bunch of liberal jackasses, a bunch of libtards. And when they find out that you're not a member of the Communist Party of America, they go after you every which way they can. And they went after me. 5 complaints, some of those the board generated, within 18 months. Last time I went before the board, they were surprised that I had an attorney and I had any money for the attorney because they were trying to waste my substance. That's what they do to you in this society. When they can't get to you any other way, they just give you this endless undue process, these processes in which you have to defend yourself. And I had another license in another state, and I was getting ready to go there and figured I better talk to an attorney up there. And he says, don't come here. He says they'll take your license away because it had been summarily suspended. And I actually was ill at the time, and I tried to take myself out properly and formally. And the psychologist with whom I was working, who was treating me, who turned out to be another liberal, another liberal jackass, as a matter of fact, he wouldn't do it. And I followed his advice. And anyway, my employer, the Arizona Department of Corrections, decided to turn me into the board. But they fabricated a bunch of evidence really badly. So they're a bunch of liars and thieves over there, and they've got it coming to them. With this new governor, perhaps some action will be taken to straighten out them. I hope so. They've been killing people too long. They've been, they've been committing a series of frauds and malfeasance there that costs the state of Arizona probably millions of dollars a year at this point. It's the largest number 1 employer for the state of Arizona. If you read the Bible, it's going to be harder to deceive you. If you get that education, the general education, and you understand the foundations of Western civilization a little bit better, you're going to be able to detect the evil ones better. You'll be better able to protect yourselves. You'll be able to contribute to saving this nation if it can be saved. I say if it can be saved because the evil ones right now are busy trying to make this nuclear war happen. You see, they want to nuke this country because they've used this country and they know that we're waking up. And if they don't do something to destroy us very soon, and they've already done quite a bit to destroy a lot of us already, and they're doing more of us are going to be dying in the next few years. You do realize that, don't you? This year alone, there's 1 million unnecessary deaths by my calculations. And I've looked at all the statistics, the numbers. I've looked at the high estimates. I've looked at the low stuff as well. And I come up with a reasonable formula. Don't ask me how I did it. I did this in my head a few days ago. And yes, I could be in error. But from what I can tell, last year they killed approximately 460,000 more of us than normal. So we had 500,000 more deaths than normal. And in case you're wondering, normal in this nation is 500,000 deaths. So we had 500,000 more than the previous years. And this year, by my calculations, we're around 960,000 more deaths are going to occur during 2022, over and above the typical 500,000 deaths. And by the way, 400,000 of those deaths are from medical malpractice and medical errors. So if you think that this medical profession deserves credibility, it doesn't. They're letting you down. They're only practicing upon you. And they are able, by license, to practice on you, and they get away with killing us. And according to my calculations, next year we're going to be losing 2.5 million, 2 million unnecessary deaths, and 500,000, which is the norm. So, what my understanding is, they haven't fully unwrapped this war machine, this weaponry that they're using on us. They haven't unfolded it fully yet. And so those are low enough numbers that you're not going to pay attention to them. You're not going to catch them. You see, it's very important they not get caught. They got caught in Germany. They got caught in different places. They got caught around the world. And you have to understand, they're very good at what they do. And you also need to understand something. They were given license. Their license was to be able to sift us, to make sure to try us, to true us. They're actually there to do some corrections. However, they've gotten carried away and they've decided they wanted to be God, play God. They wanted to administer all of those sufferings that are in the Bible that are detailed for us, like you will eat your young. Where do you think those aborted fetuses go to? There's other curses in there as well, and they've decided they're going to make sure those are administered to us as well. And so they're busy doing it. They're using the Bible as a playbook. They're very wicked people. However, they have exceeded the license they were granted. They're killing us. And in case you're wondering, Caucasians were approximately 33% of the world's population, and we peaked in 1936. And now, by my estimation, we're falling so rapidly, I can't put a number on it, but I would think that we are probably down to 5% or less of the world's population through a bunch of miscegenations and a bunch of genociding. And in case you're wondering, the biggest genocide that has occurred was in Russia. White Russian Christians. Real descendants of Israel the man. Yeah, they're our brothers and our sisters. Yeah, they write backwards. They were on the other side of the Tower of Babel. We write towards the Tower of Babel, and they do too. They fell to the other side, we fell to this side. So we write left to right. They write right to left. Okay, no big deal. And the ancient Israelites wrote from right to left as well. Yeah. Now, I want you to buy this Bible, and I want you to read the book of Genesis. And then I want you to read the book of Genesis again. You get to the genealogies that are boring and tedious, just skim over those, even skip those. Push on to the next section. I want you to understand a lot of what you're reading is prophecy that hasn't even been pointed out to you yet. You're not going to get this in the big box churches. In my estimation, by 1850, all the seminaries have been taken over by the evil ones. Everything is centrally controlled today. You know that. And so they'll dictate what the Bible study is, and they'll dictate what the Bible is, and they'll dictate what you're going to believe too. So they're not going to tell you the truth that's really in the Bible, and there's only one way to get that. You have to read it for yourself. Sure, you can tune into me and listen to me spout off, but that's not going to take care of things. Come on. I don't know what she's growling at back in the bedroom. She's not quite used to that space heater yet. Electricity is cheap this month. Next month they're doubling it. Yeah, so I'm going to enjoy it while it's cheap. But everything's going to be going up, and much more than what you ever think it could. If you want to know the next stage, then look at the Weimar Republic and the hyperinflation they suffered, because we got the same banking crap going on here, the same Babylonian money magic going on. And then, in case you're wondering, I didn't realize this, but the German people were dealing with wokeness as well. And I knew that they had book burnings. I read about that when I was a kid. But those were portrayed as they burned Bibles or burned good books or something. No, it turns out that the first books they burned were this guy named Hirschfeld, something like that. I don't remember his full name. He was a medical doctor, and what did he write about? Transgenderism. And he had photography, and it was disturbing stuff. It's all black and white, of course, but when you see it, you realize this was a disturbed mind that came up with this stuff. And the evil ones learned a lesson from what they did to the Germans. Yeah, they won that war. We didn't win the war. I'm not talking about the Germans. The evil ones won that war. They waged it, they started it, and they prevailed. And they used the might of the United States of America just like they use the might of the United States of America today. Why do you think you have 22 servicemen, 22 veterans, killing themselves every day? Every day, 22 of our men and women who have served, mostly the men, killed themselves. Why do you think they do that? Because they can't tell you what they did. They can't tell you what they know. They can't tell you how bad this government is and how horrible they feel for having been used. And right now they're busy trying to get your ass nuked. And it may happen. Now, as for me, I'm going to enjoy the day. I'm going to enjoy my food and my drink. And if the sun's up and out like I expect it will be, I'm going to enjoy that. I'm going to go buy myself some new shoes. Dog chewed one of them up again. Yes, you chewed my shoe. Yeah. Gonna go buy cheap shoes this time. I don't think she can stop herself. And she's 11 months old. Almost a year old. You would think that she had grown out of it by now. The problem is I don't keep her busy enough. And her breed's got to have a job. And when they aren't busy enough and they don't have a job, they become destructive. They get bored. And she goes and rips up on my damn carpet. She did it again yesterday because I've been trying to keep her calm and keep her still to get that wound on her leg to heal up. Okay. Got her head, her muzzle, nuzzling between my arm and my side. Her ears are up listening to me and every word I say. Oh, yes, what a sweet girl. Yes. And that wound on her chin is, the scab's about ready to come off. I'm doing my best not to rub it, not to touch it. Look, folks, I need you to buy my Bible. It's the best Bible in the world. And I feel privileged to bring it to you. And if you've been with me this long, I'm going to share with you why I feel privileged. My ancestor brought the King James Bible to the rest of you, to us in 1611. There's a secret history on that. And I'm going to tell you what it is because I got the audacity to do it. Can I prove it? Well, can you disprove it? Take the challenge up. Somebody in Great Britain, you've got access to the documents. You have access to the libraries. You have access to the public records. You can go look this up. But they said that Queen Elizabeth died without a consort, died without having a husband, and died without having a lover, died without having children. However, that's not true. She had 2 sons, and they were fathered by a Kent, as near I can tell. And you haven't heard much of the Kents these days. Back when I was growing up, I didn't have to repeat my name. Everybody knew it was Kent. They just heard it once and they knew it. That's because of the television show in which Clark Kent was Superman. So you need to understand that the Kents actually were a force to behold in England, and we helped the king quite a bit. We helped the king so much, my family was given a land grant in New Hampshire. And I don't know what that was, and sometimes I joke and say they wanted to get rid of us, so they gave us land in the New World. Who knows? I'd love to find out the truth on that. But what I do know is that the man who produced the 1611 Bible was the world's greatest playwright, and he had to give it up because he was going to be discovered. And had he been discovered, they would have beheaded the queen, because the queen was his mother. And they couldn't even give him the proper last name of Kent. That would have been too discoverable. So instead, they called him Bacon. Francis Bacon. Sir Francis Bacon. Sir Francis Bacon bragged that he had every book in his library, his personal library. Now, who could have afforded all of those expensive books but the son of the queen? And there's more to the story. He had a brother, and his brother conspired against their mother, the queen, and he was going to take the throne from her. He was discovered. He was caught. He was charged. And he was tried, and he was executed. And the man who tried him, got him sentenced and executed, was his own brother. Sir Francis Bacon had his own brother executed. I believe the brother committed the crime. I believe it was a proper charge, and the punishment was proper. You have to remember things were quite a bit different back then. The queen could not have done anything outside of the church. Had she done that, they would have declared she was a heretic, and they would have sentenced her to death. They would have beheaded her or burned her at the stake. And the Elizabethan era, ERA, was an important one. It produced the foundations for Western civilization in terms of literature. Now, the Bible had been translated into English earlier, and the gentleman who did that first, they burned him at the stake. In this Bible by King James, and by the way, King James was not a good man. There was a book with an introduction written by a very famous author, Dickens, Charles Dickens. And for 4 pages, he describes the character of James, King James. And it was horrible. And my older brother lost that. I wish I had a copy of it. He wishes he still had it. But basically, the man was a homosexual. He was a murderer. And he was a pedophile. He was a pretty bad dude. But he gave you the King James Bible. There were some errors in the King James Bible. Some things were not translated as accurately as what we have today. And so that's why I'm happy to bring you the proper name version of the King James Bible. It corrects a lot of the language and the errors that were in the King James Bible. It gives it to you in modern English with modern syntax. You see, the reason the original syntax is difficult for us is because it's reversed. And so your negatives, your modifiers, your adjectives, adverbs happen in the reverse order than what we are used to. And that's a vestige from the fact that we came from Israel and wrote from right to left. And our syntax was in the opposite order. And as the language has evolved, We've been correcting it, making it easier to understand. The proper name version of the King James Bible took 5 years of negotiation just to get the rights to publish it. And in case you're wondering, the King James Bible is copyrighted everywhere on the planet except for the United States of America. As a result of our Revolutionary War, for some reason, they decided to dishonor the king or queen's copyrights on the Bible. The Queen of England, who is deceased, now it's the King of England, owns the copyrights throughout the world to the King James Bible. It took 5 years of negotiations, and I guess the attorneys that initiated, they started off negotiating with, actually had passed away, and a new group of attorneys were on the case. And what was holding it up before was they did not, the publisher and the committees did not want to be forced to use the these and thous of the Old English language. They wanted modern English, and the Crown insisted that they would keep that quaint Old English in there. You're going to find us a more accurate Bible, and you're going to make less assumptions, less error when you read this Bible. So it's going to help you. You will learn the name of Yahweh and the name of Yahshua, and you will learn the Messiah. And by the way, I had to correct myself because Christ is mentioned in there one time in the book of John. And it's given as the Messiah, which is the Christ. That's the only time Christ is in there that I can tell so far. Now, there's Christians that are mentioned as well, but you need to understand something, that if you read the Bible and look at the context, you'll realize that the followers didn't call each other Christians. They called themselves, members of the way, brothers and sisters. And they also considered it the faith of our fathers rather than the Christian religion. Christian religion is something that man developed. You can be a believer and not be one of those big box on the corner type Christians. As a matter of fact, if you're a real believer, then you'll understand that. But that's really advanced stuff. I hope you get there. I do believe that we can fight this war with the Spirit by becoming Bible readers, so we're not deceived as readily. And I believe also this is the longest video I've ever done, so I'm going to end it here. May Yahweh bless. Realize that the evil is still walking the earth. Realize that when Yahshua was taken out and tempted by the devil with those 3 great temptations, that the devil owned the earth at that time, and it was his to give to whomever he wanted. All he wanted from Yahshua was that he bow down and worship him. And he could have had all these kingdoms that the devil owned. So we're coming to the end of the earth age. And what's going to be happening at this is the kingdom of heaven will be established upon the earth. And you can help me in establishing it before the big event, because the big event's coming. I think maybe we could stop it if we changed our outlook on the planet, if humanity came around. And I think we could do that possibly. But that's kind of out there thinking, even for me, that we would have enough, our behavior and our spiritual presence would have enough of an impact to change the cycles that the earth was designed to go through. I just don't know. Yes, okay. Come on up here. Come on, you make an appearance. Yeah. Oh, yeah. She chewed up her leather collar, so she's stuck with the metal one, which I wouldn't leave on her, but I got to have something to hook her up on. She stays in the yard just fine, but they got to be on a leash in this neighborhood. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you could like the video, that'd be great. Leave a comment, words of encouragement. If you want to pray for me, pray that I sell Bibles. Pray for my health and well-being. Above all, pray that I might understand the will of Yahweh, Creator, Father, and have the wherewithal to comply and fulfill that will and fulfill my mission. Okay. Yahweh bless America.